Sonic Adventure 2 has to be one of the most perplexing and interesting little snippets of gaming history. A game whose legacy has lived on into the modern day, Sonic Adventure 2 has shaped the hearts and minds of many a gamer throughout the years, due to its wild and fun dynamic gameplay, as well as just wild wacky characters, juxtaposed with one of the best soundtracks gaming has to offer, that has stood the test of time, and for a lot of people has been the game to point to when they think of Sonic. I am a new Sonic player. I never really played Sonic before, and I never interacted with the franchise all that much. However, after seeing so many members of my community be massive fans of the Sonic character, I decided, well, why not? Let's dive into the franchise with an open mind, get good at it, and make our own judgments, shall we? We started with Sonic Unleashed, a game that we have started, played, and beaten, and I love that game a lot. And the second game on our list, through the Sonic journey, is Sonic Adventure 2, a game that is particularly relevant in 2024 due to the obvious influences Sonic 3 the movie has from the game, including the logo. I have heard of Sonic Adventure 2. I've had friends who have played Sonic Adventure 2 for their entire life. I just always kind of avoided it. But I dove into it on stream and a little bit off stream to get the footage for this video, and I can confidently say that I think I'm going to enjoy this game. Now, why do I like Sonic Adventure 2 so much? Well, it's a bit of an interesting case, because I think even more so than Unleashed, if you asked me for a list of faults that I find with Sonic Adventure 2, bearing in mind I'm playing an unmodded version on PC on Steam right now, I could go on and on about a list of faults. Whether that is janky camera controls, bad audio balancing, a pretty subpar PC port to begin with, really stiff and unorganic voice acting, weird pacing in terms of the story, and also tutorials being pretty, well, bleh. I can go on and on about a list of faults, but at the end of the day, and at the end of that conversation, I'm going to go, well, but I still love the game. Now, I'm not even that particularly far into it. I'm about 3 hours. And I think I'm roughly halfway through the hero story, or at least side of things. But there's a shocking amount to this game, and I definitely think it has one of those older game charms, where the game just throws you into the deep end, and just tells you go, and gives you minimalistic guidance as to how to progress, and you kind of learn on your feet and as you go. Actually, my friend particularly noted saying, hey, yeah, I didn't realize how touch and go Sonic Adventure 2 kind of is. As someone who had played the game for their entire life, they're like, there's a lot of things I just took to granted that the game doesn't really teach you. For instance, in one of the stages, I found it necessary to do an uppercut maneuver with the character Knuckles. However, I never found a tutorial in-game to tell me that was even a feature. I read the little booklet that they have in the main menu, which is supposed to represent the bygone era of game little pamphlets that came in the box, but nowhere did I see a chow or a tutorial that stated, in order to do an uppercut with Knuckles, I had to spin around a bit and then hit a button and he would do an uppercut. But once I saw that in chat, I was able to get the one emerald fragment that I really needed to end the level. In the moment, that's kind of annoying, but it's one of those things where, for a lot of older games, where once you pick it up, you have that knowledge going into the future, and you kind of just move on from it. It was annoying in the present, but now that we're in the future, it's kind of whatever. And there's a lot of little decisions that the game has made throughout its entire experience that you can kind of just chalk up to the times, because I think at the end of the day, the game itself is really fun. I really enjoy the level design particularly, and I love the pacing of the gameplay, where you alternate between one of 3 main playstyles. You have the speed stages with Sonic, which sometimes have a boss fight to them, which you quantify a different type of gameplay, but for instance, we're just going to loop it all into Sonic gameplay. You have the Tails gameplay, where you pilot a freaking mech that comes out of nowhere. I'm a particular fan of these. And you just go through a level just shooting and wheeling and dealing a whole bunch of enemy robots into oblivion. Then you have the Knuckles levels, which are particularly the most interesting and honestly the most unique of the 3, because in the Knuckles levels, you are just thrown into this kind of sandbox map area, where the goal is not to progress down some linear corridor, you are experiencing and exploring this open-ended location to try and find 3 Chaos Emerald fragments. Now, they can spawn in randomly generated locations, but it is up to you and your little, like, compass thing. It's that game mechanic where the closer you are, the more it beeps at you, and you have to find these 3 pieces of the Chaos Emerald. And the game alternates between each of these different playstyles, and I assume the Dark story, or the alternate storyline the game has on offer with Shadow, is essentially the same formula, but with just different characters that you are controlling, like Shadow, Hedgehog, or the Batgirl, whose name is I always forget. And the game is filled to the brim with collectibles, namely in the form of Chow. Chow are these little animals that, if you remember from the 2D games, at the end of each stage, you would hit a button and free a bunch of little animals. Yeah, those Chow, those are kind of the main collectibles again. And you can, like, even train them like little Pokemon, like level up their stats by fighting other collectibles in these stages to level them up for different minigames. It's kind of interesting, and definitely reeks as one of those gameplay mechanics and ideas that I like to call retro game-esque, where they assume that you're only going to buy 1 or like 2, maybe even 3 games if you're lucky, games a year as a kid. So what they're going to do is, instead of having one-dimensional gameplay, they'll throw in some giant like time sink into the game as well that you can really like sink your teeth into and get good, or just grind and get better at. In a lot of ways, the Chow gameplay kind of fulfills that role to me, where you can kind of just skip it if you want to, which is what I'm elected to do mostly. However, if you really want to sink your teeth into, there's a lot there that you can kind of optimize and get better at. I assume. It could be more simple than I'm letting on, or that I just think at this current time. After all, these are my first impressions with the game. Now, coming off the back of Sonic Unleashed, which is a game that released way later on than Sonic Unleashed 2, which I believe released on, or at least in 2001, it's definitely slower paced, especially for the Sonic stages, where you don't have a boost button, or I'm just stupid, I haven't found it. I don't think there's a boost button here. And I have typically found the stages to be rather, is brutal the word I want to use here, in terms of the rank that they prescribe you. Even when I do a stage I think I did relatively well or relatively fast, I think it's based on completion overall and how many rings you can collect, if not also Chow and collectibles. Don't quote me on that, again, these are my first impressions, and I tend to find that even if I do a stage rather fast, if I don't collect a lot of rings, well, my score and my overall rank is going to suffer because of that. So I definitely think there's a large skill gap and skill curve to learn and get better at in regards to this, to where the name of the game is not just only speed and going fast, but also can you collect things fast. And that's an important distinction as well, as it also adds to the replayability, where you're not just trying to optimize a singular path, or trying to get from point A to point B as fast as humanly possible. You're trying to get from point A to point B while collecting a whole bunch of stuff along the way. Maybe it's the Steam port, maybe I'm just really bad and, not used to Sonic gameplay, at least right now. Maybe it's just a Sonic Adventure 2 specific issue. I tend to find controlling Sonic and going left to right to be a little bit difficult and a little bit complicated from time to time, and he either goes a little bit too fast or a little bit too far to how much I would want him to course correct. I particularly find this apropos on turns, to where I think I'm overthinking it. I don't need to brake for each turn to kind of drift. I think I just need to actually just make the turn and move my analog stick and only do that. And I think I found more success doing that when I was playing off stream. I tend to find one of the golden rules of Sonic, at least in my brief entry into the series so far, is that it's honestly a matter of KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. And when I think a bunch of complex controller inputs may be the key, or optimizing drift and all that, I tend to find minimalistic standards and minimalistic button inputs to be the name of the game, and just not to overthink it. For instance, one of the kind of quote-unquote culture shocks I experienced with Sonic Adventure 2 was the loop-de-loops. You know those moments in a Sonic game where you're going fast and then you have to like go in like a Cheerio loop, as if you're tying your shoes? Yeah, well, on stream for one of those loops, I was having a particularly difficult time actually making it across the entire loop. I thought maybe I just needed additional speed going into the loop or whatever, but I actually found out that those parts aren't really scripted as I thought they were. I have to continue holding the button forward, and if I do that, I have just enough speed to make it across them. Now, this may be a facepalm situation if you experienced with Sonic, but as someone who didn't really grow up with these games and does not understand and have that year's worth of just muscle memory accumulated, it was something that I'm like, oh, okay, I can understand this, get used to it, and utilize this information going into the future. And I definitely found my performance on the whole to be far more confident and more natural when I did my second save slot for the footage in this video, where maneuvering each of the characters, Sonic, Knuckles, and Tails, felt far more natural and just, well, good, as I'm starting to get the hang of the controls. Now, I think Sonic Adventure 2 is a far cry from a perfect game. However, it's one of those examples of a game where I think, even if the cons technically outnumber the pros, I think the pros outweigh the cons. Like, I think the game on the whole kind of gives off this Saturday morning cartoon feel and vibe, and while I believe the voice acting on the whole to be underdelivered and just poorly directed on the whole, I think the music is amazing, and I think the feel of the game just kind of being the Saturday morning adventure cartoon is quite enjoyable as well. And for some reason, even I have a sense of nostalgia for this bygone time period, where it feels like you're getting comfortable on a Saturday morning, the bowl of cereal, snuggling up to the TV to watch one of your favorite cartoons or whatever. The game in a lot of ways feels as if you're playing a cartoon, and I think that's one of the best advantages Sonic Adventure 2 has going for it. I think the stages and the overall design are really fun and interesting and varied and interesting, and while if you played any one of these individual gameplay styles, the Sonic, Knuckles, or Tails formula too much, it would probably get one-dimensional and stale and boring and repetitious. The fact that it alternates between these three on such an often basis, and quickly enough, I tend to find that it keeps my attention, keeps me hooked in, wanting more. I think the story is whatever, and the Tails VA actually hurts me. And there's some scenes that are just kind of awkward, and I definitely think sound balancing, and this may be a Steam port specific issue, is just all over the place, to where either the dialogue drowns out, well, I guess it would be more apt to say that the music drowns out the dialogue in cutscenes, but when you're in the game, I tend to find the gameplay sound effects drown out the music. For the first stage, City Escape, I found this to be particularly annoying, as the song City Escape is super good! Escape from the City is one of the most known and beloved songs in all of gaming, for good reason. So yeah, I think one of the major issues I'm having with Sonic Adventure 2 right now is the storytelling, and the story itself is kind of one-dimensional, but the actual gameplay and the gameplay loop is so fun and enjoyable and replayable that I find myself wanting to come back for more and more. So yeah, I think those are my first impressions with Sonic Adventure 2. A game with plenty of cons, but the pros, in my opinion, are really, really, really strong, at least so far. We'll be back once I finish the game to give a full, proper review for it, but don't forget to go check out my full review of Sonic Unleashed, and the absolute time I had on the final boss. That was something. Oh yeah, boss fights in this game are kind of like whatever, by the way, just like, I forgot to mention this. They are really easy and kind of repetitious, but like, they're not egregious, like, they're fine. Just personally not all that memorable. But I think the stars of the show are the regular stages on the whole. So thank you all for tuning in, my pleasure for making the video, and if you enjoyed it, please leave a comment down below with your favorite memory from Sonic Adventure 2. I have a long way to go in order to actually get good at Sonic, but hey, this grind will not stop. Thank you all for tuning in. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe and hit the bell icon to be notified for when I upload and stream in the future. Stay safe, have a great day, go play some video games if you can, go fast, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody, until we meet again.